There's a reason goodness feels heavy. It's not only the weight of moral choice, but the quiet, crushing realization that in a world built on power, kindness has a price. Every act of mercy, every moment of restraint, every decision to choose decency over dominance leaves behind a bruise, sometimes invisible, sometimes carved deep into the soul. This is the cost of goodness, and it's far more shocking than most of us are prepared to admit. Centuries ago, an Italian diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli tried to warn us. To him, the world was not a battlefield between good and evil. It was a stage where power decided the script. His most infamous book, The Prince, was not a celebration of cruelty as many think. It was a dissection of it. He had seen firsthand what goodness cost in the corridors of politics. Kingdoms lost to hesitation, noble men destroyed by mercy, and honest leaders devoured by those who had no moral brakes at all. "It is better to be feared than loved," he wrote, "not because love is weak, but because fear survives." Machiavelli's words are unsettling because they hold a mirror to something we wish wasn't true. In a world ruled by wolves, the sheep that insist on staying pure often become prey. Yet even as we know this, something inside us still resists. We don't want to become ruthless, we don't want to betray our values. But the longer we walk through life, the more we notice that those who are kind often suffer quietly, while those who manipulate, deceive and dominate seem to rise untouched. You've seen it too, the co-worker who takes credit for someone else's work, climbing while the honest man stays silent. The friend who betrays trust to get ahead, while the loyal one stays behind, wondering if integrity was a mistake. These aren't accidents of fate. They're the echoes of Machiavelli's realism playing out in modern form. He understood that goodness unprotected is a vulnerability. That virtue without strategy is not strength, it's exposure. But here's the irony. Machiavelli never said goodness was useless. He said it was dangerous without understanding power. "A prince must learn how not to be good," he wrote, meaning that a leader must know how to use goodness, when to show it, and when to withhold it. It was never about abandoning morality, it was about mastering it, about wielding it consciously, not blindly. The shocking truth is that most people confuse goodness with harmlessness. We think that being good means avoiding conflict, pleasing everyone, never offending. But real goodness, the kind that changes history, has claws. It is not afraid of confrontation. It does not apologize for boundaries. It is goodness with a spine. The kind of goodness that doesn't crumble in the face of injustice or manipulation, but stands tall, even when standing tall means standing alone. Still, there is a toll. To be good in a world that rewards cunning is to live with constant friction. You'll question yourself. You'll watch others rise through deception and wonder if honesty is a fool's path. You'll lose things, opportunities, friendships, respect from those who mistake gentleness for weakness. And yet the most tragic cost of goodness isn't what you lose, it's how it isolates you. Because the deeper your compassion, the more you feel the pain of others, and the more alone you become in carrying it. History remembers the conquerors, but it's the good who hold the world together in silence. The teachers who stay late with a struggling student, knowing no one will applaud them. The whistleblowers who lose everything because they couldn't stay quiet. The ordinary souls who choose decency when cruelty would have been easier. They are invisible Machiavellian counterweights, those who refuse to surrender humanity, even when it costs them everything. Machiavelli saw the dark mechanics of power, but he also hinted at something deeper, that power itself is neutral. It is not evil, it simply amplifies the nature of whoever holds it. In the hands of the cruel, power corrupts. In the hands of the good, power redeems. But to redeem it, you must first understand it. And that means accepting the uncomfortable truth that purity without wisdom is not noble, it's naive. Imagine two leaders. One is kind, principled, and endlessly forgiving. The other is strategic, disciplined, and knows when to draw lines. The first may win hearts, but the second wins wars, and then uses victory to build peace. That is the Machiavellian paradox. Goodness that survives must know when to be ruthless. Compassion alone cannot protect itself. Yet when you wield goodness with awareness, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a victim of your own decency. You learn that saying no can be an act of love, that protecting your energy is not selfish, it's stewardship. That forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and that sometimes the most moral thing you can do is walk away. goodness, when it matures, becomes quiet power. It no longer seeks validation. It doesn't need to prove its worth through suffering. It becomes discerning, kind but not gullible, generous but not exploitable. It knows that mercy extended to the cruel is injustice to the innocent. It knows that peace bought by silence is just fear in disguise. That's the hidden truth Machiavelli was trying to teach. Not that goodness is foolish, but that goodness must evolve. The truly powerful are not those who abandon conscience, but those who learn to protect it from being used against them. The shocking cost of goodness is not that it hurts, it's that it demands transformation. To be good in this world is to learn the art of balance, the tenderness of the dove and the vigilance of the serpent, the heart that forgives and the mind that remembers, the hand that helps but also knows when to let go. It's walking through a storm with your integrity intact, even as the world tells you that you're wasting your time. And when you finally reach that place where your goodness is no longer a performance but a power, you realize something Machiavelli himself might have envied, that the rarest form of strength is moral clarity, that true power is not domination but discipline, that the world may never reward your goodness but it will always recognize its light. Still, every light casts a shadow, and every act of goodness leaves a scar. The longer you walk this path, the more you see how fragile decency truly is, how easily it can be mocked, betrayed, or broken. But you also begin to understand why it matters so much. Because without it, everything collapses. The cruel may rise faster, but their thrones are built on sand. The good, even when crushed, become the foundation for everything that lasts. And so the question Machiavelli leaves us with is not whether goodness has a cost. It's whether we're willing to pay it. Whether we can carry the burden of conscience without letting it turn into bitterness, whether we can stay kind without being blind, whether we can stand in a world that rewards manipulation and still choose truth, not because it's easy but because it's right. Maybe that's the real test of power, not how much control you gain, but how much humanity you keep. When you've lived long enough to see goodness betrayed, you begin to realize why so few people choose it. It's not because they're evil, it's because goodness hurts. It asks you to love those who will never love you back. It asks you to tell the truth when silence would save you. It asks you to hold your integrity like a torch in a storm, knowing full well the wind might snuff it out. And when it does, there is no applause, no medals, only the quiet ache of a soul that refused to bend. This is the secret Machiavelli understood better than anyone, that power tests virtue. It doesn't just expose corruption, it exposes sincerity. It reveals whether your goodness is a mask or a conviction, because when the stakes rise, masks fall. People do what they truly believe will save them, and if survival is their god, then morality becomes currency spent or hoarded as the moment demands. Machiavelli was not trying to destroy morality, he was trying to strip it of illusion. He wanted to show us that the world doesn't run on ideals, it runs on incentives. That people, even the righteous ones, act according to fear, ambition, or self-interest more often than they'd ever admit. But in exposing that truth, he also revealed something sacred, that genuine goodness, the kind that persists without reward, is not weakness, it is rebellion. To be good when the world rewards cruelty is to defy the logic of survival itself. It's an act of moral insurrection, a refusal to let the darkness dictate your form. That's why true goodness feels so painful. It's resistance in a world built on compromise. It's the soul's refusal to become mechanical, and every time you choose it, you are paying with something real, your comfort, your safety, sometimes even your reputation. But here's the paradox. The same world that punishes goodness also depends on it. Civilization survives not because of the powerful, but because of the principled. Because somewhere, someone refuses to cut corners. Because someone tells the truth even when it costs them everything. The world runs on the silent sacrifices of the good. They are the unseen architecture of human decency, yet even they, the quiet pillars, wrestle with doubt. There comes a moment, often late at night, when you question whether your kindness matters, whether your restraint was foolish, whether you should have fought back harder, lied once or twice to make life easier. You stare at the ceiling and wonder if Machiavelli was right all along, that morality is a beautiful illusion for those too timid to win. But then you remember the moments when your goodness changed something small maybe, but real. The look in someone's eyes when you forgave them, the person who stood a little taller because you believed in them, the situation that could have turned ugly but didn't because you chose grace instead of rage. Those are not illusions, they are fragments of eternity. Proof that goodness, though costly, has power that fear will never understand. Machiavelli's world was one of courts and kings, where betrayal was a profession and survival a performance. Ours is not so different. The thrones are digital now, the crowns made of influence. The same games of perception and power play out behind screens and in boardrooms, classrooms, even families. But the lesson remains, you cannot navigate this world with innocence alone. You must learn the language of wolves without losing the heart of a shepherd. That's what goodness in the modern world requires, not purity, but wisdom. The wisdom to know that some people use kindness as a weapon and others see it as weakness. The wisdom to understand that not every battle deserves your spirit. The wisdom to recognize that you can't save everyone and that trying to will destroy you. Goodness without boundaries becomes martyrdom, and martyrdom repeated long enough breeds resentment. The world doesn't need more martyrs. It needs more warriors of conscience, people who know how to stand firm without hate, who know that compassion is not capitulation, who can wield truth like a blade, precise, not cruel, because the most dangerous person in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one whose silence holds conviction. In the end, Machiavelli's hidden truth wasn't that goodness is a liability, it's that goodness must evolve into power. Not the power that conquers, but the power that endures, the kind of strength that remains kind, even after it's seen how dark people can be. That's the ultimate victory, not ruling others but ruling yourself. When you understand this, the cost of goodness no longer feels like loss, it feels like purification. Every betrayal becomes instruction, every disappointment, refinement, every pain, a reminder that your values are alive. You begin to see goodness not as fragility, but as fire. The world may try to extinguish it, but fire does not surrender. It transforms everything it touches, and maybe that's what Machiavelli missed. He studied power as manipulation, but he never truly grasped power as light. The kind of light that terrifies the corrupt because it cannot be bought or broken. The kind of power that outlasts kings, empires, and lies. Because long after the cunning have fallen, the good remain, scarred perhaps, but still standing. So yes, goodness has a cost, but cruelty has an invoice too, and when the debt of power comes due, only one of them leaves you whole. There's a haunting beauty in the way goodness survives destruction. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand recognition. It simply endures like a candle that refuses to die out no matter how many times the wind tries to claim it. And that endurance, quiet, invisible, unyielding, is where its real power lives. Because the world has always been divided between those who chase power and those who carry it without realizing. Machiavelli wrote for the first kind, but history is built on the second. The ones who ruled not by fear but by moral gravity. Those who didn't need armies to command attention, only integrity. Think of Gandhi, standing barefoot before an empire that ruled half the world, armed with nothing but conviction. Or of Martin Luther King Jr., whose voice, calm, steady, and full of grace, shook the foundations of a nation. Both men understood Machiavelli's game. They knew the world was cruel, manipulative, merciless, and yet they refused to play it by its rules. They turned goodness into strategy, compassion into resistance. They proved that you can be shrewd without being ruthless and powerful without losing your soul. That's the forgotten art of moral power, learning to be good and wise at the same time. Too often we're taught their opposites, that goodness means weakness and wisdom means cynicism. But that's a false dichotomy. True wisdom doesn't abandon goodness, it protects it. It knows when to be soft and when to be steel. It understands that sometimes mercy requires confrontation and peace requires saying no. We like to think goodness is simple. Just be kind, be honest, be fair. But in practice, goodness is war. It's internal first, the war between your ideals and your instincts, between the urge to forgive and the ache to retaliate, between wanting to believe in people and the evidence that they might betray you again. That's where the real battle happens, not in the headlines or the history books, but in the quiet chambers of your own conscience. And every time you choose the higher road, it costs you something. Comfort, control, maybe even pride, but it gives you something far greater in return. Clarity. That rare kind of peace that comes not from getting what you want, but from knowing you did what was right. It's a strange kind of peace, though, heavy, almost bittersweet, because goodness, once chosen, often leaves you lonelier than you expected. The good rarely travel in crowds. They walk alone, not because they want to, but because few can bear the same burden. It's easy to join the mob when the world grows cruel. It's harder to stand still, and in that stillness, in that deliberate refusal to conform, something extraordinary begins to form within you, a kind of spiritual sovereignty. You stop needing validation. You stop needing to be understood. You start moving from approval to authenticity. That's the kind of strength Machiavelli never measured. He saw power as external, something you hold over others. But the deepest form of power is internal, what you hold within yourself. The power to stay gentle in chaos, to remain honest in deception, to keep your heart soft when life tries to harden it. That is mastery. Because at some point you begin to understand that goodness is not a performance for the world, it's a private covenant with your own soul. And when you honor it, something changes in how you see everything. You stop mistaking cruelty for strength. You stop chasing victory for its own sake. You start recognizing that power without compassion is just fear in disguise. Machiavelli's hidden truth wasn't that goodness should die, it was that goodness should learn how to survive the manipulation of the clever, to survive the betrayal of the trusted, to survive the exhaustion that comes from caring too deeply in a world that cares too little, to survive not by becoming cruel, but by becoming conscious. That's the evolution, the transformation from innocent to aware, from naive to wise, from kind to formidable. The good who last are not the ones who never fall, they're the ones who rise without losing tenderness, the ones who forgive but never forget the lesson, the ones who see the world's ugliness and still believe in beauty, not because they're blind, but because they refuse to let the darkness dictate what they see. And maybe that's the final cost of goodness, learning that you will never fit neatly into this world, because goodness by its nature doesn't belong to systems built on greed or vanity. It's a foreign language to those fluent in deceit. But that's also what makes it so powerful. It's unpredictable. The world doesn't know what to do with people who cannot be bought, threatened or corrupted. So yes, the good suffer, they lose, they bleed quietly in ways the world will never see. But when the dust settles, when the power-hungry have devoured each other, it is always the good who rebuild. They are the ones who plant seeds after the fires. They are the ones who teach, heal, forgive, and begin again. Machiavelli's cynicism showed us the anatomy of dominance, but life, real, messy, beautiful life, shows us the anatomy of endurance, and goodness in its truest form is endurance made flesh. It's the slow, stubborn insistence that humanity still matters, that love still matters, that truth, no matter how inconvenient, is still worth telling. Perhaps that's the real hidden truth after all, not that goodness is weak, but that it's eternal. Empires rise, kings fall, ideologies fade, but goodness, quiet, patient, steadfast, outlives them all, because power ends when the sword rusts. But goodness, it becomes legend. And maybe that's the lesson Machiavelli didn't write down but secretly knew, that in the long arc of time, the cunning may win the throne, but only the good win the soul. There comes a moment somewhere near the end of every age when the powerful look back at the ruins they've built and wonder what it was all for. The palaces crumble, the gold fades, the titles lose their luster, and in that silence, something whispers through the wreckage. Goodness endures. It always does. It may not rule empires, but it rules memory. It may not command armies, but it commands reverence. It is the one force that cannot be erased, because it lives not in monuments or laws, but in the conscience of those who dared to care. And that is the part Machiavelli never fully saw. He dissected power, but never the human spirit. He understood politics, but not grace. To him, power was control over others. But to the good, power is mastery of self. The ability to stay whole when the world is intent on fracturing you. The courage to choose love in the face of hate, not out of weakness, but out of defiance. That's the kind of power no tyrant can touch. The shocking cost of goodness, then, is also its glory. Because it strips away every illusion of reward. You don't choose it because it pays. You choose it because it defines you. You choose it when no one's watching, when doing right will cost you comfort, reputation or peace. And when you choose it anyway, you become something rare, incorruptible. You see, the world doesn't truly fear evil. It understands evil. Evil is predictable. It feeds on greed, ego, desire. But goodness terrifies the corrupt, because it cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be bribed, threatened, or manipulated. It stands there, calm and steady, with nothing to gain and nothing to lose, and in that stillness lies an unshakable power. Look closely at history, and you'll notice this pattern. The most ruthless rulers built fear. The most virtuous souls built faith. The difference is that fear dies with the fearful, but faith outlives the faithful. That's why centuries later we remember saints more vividly than kings. We quote the words of the gentle more than the decrees of the powerful, because in the end what moves the human heart is not dominance, it's decency. Still, it takes tremendous courage to stay good in a world like this, because the moment you decide to act from love rather than ego, the world begins to test you. It will take your patience and stretch it. It will mock your sincerity. It will make you question whether decency is just a beautiful way to lose. But if you endure long enough, you'll see what Machiavelli never lived to see, that every act of goodness plants a seed in someone else. And no matter how dark the soil, those seeds remember the light. Perhaps that's how the world is healed, not through grand revolutions or perfect systems, but through small stubborn acts of integrity that refuse to die. A mother forgiving when she has every right to hate. A friend speaking truth when silence would be easier. A leader choosing empathy over ego, knowing it will cost them the crowd. These are the quiet revolutions, the ones that never make headlines but change hearts all the same. And maybe that's what goodness really is. The courage to remain soft when life tries to harden you. The discipline to keep your hands open in a world that rewards clenched fists. The wisdom to understand that love and strength are not opposites but the same force seen from different angles. Love gives strength meaning, strength gives love structure. Together they make something indestructible. In the end, the cost of goodness is the pain of seeing how easily the world forgets it. But the reward is knowing that you didn't. That while others lost themselves chasing crowns of dust, you chose something eternal. That every compromise you refused, every injustice you spoke against, every wound you bore with dignity became a silent declaration, I am still human, because that's what goodness really protects. Not morality, not image, not virtue, but humanity itself. It is the last defense against the corrosion of the soul. And when you guard it, even at great cost, you become part of something ancient and unbreakable, the lineage of those who chose light, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And so maybe the question Machiavelli leaves us with isn't how to win, but how to endure, how to live with power and still be kind, how to see through illusion and still believe in beauty, how to stand in the fire and still remain human, because in the end, all crowns fall, all titles fade, all empires sink back into dust. But goodness, quiet, invisible and eternal, remains. It is the one form of power that no death, no deception and no Machiavellian scheme can ever destroy. Because true goodness doesn't die, it multiplies, passing from one weary soul to another, like light through broken glass. And though it costs everything, it gives back something far greater, the power to face the darkness without becoming it. That is the real victory, the one Machiavelli hinted at, but never named, the one that belongs not to the clever, but to the courageous, the one that whispers through time, be good, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because that is how the world is reborn,